Chapter 1. Thebes. A. Historical summary. In terms of pharaonic antiquities, Thebes, the present-day city of Luxor, is the wealthiest city in the Arab Republic of Egypt. It is situated 60 kilometers south of Cairo on the eastern bank of the Nile in the Kenna-Governorate. It has been established by recent finds in the Karnak complex that Thebes had a long history dating back to the early Old Kingdom, 2686 to 2181 BC, if not earlier. Thebes was listed as one of the cities in the 4th province of Upper Egypt in texts from the Old Kingdom. It was first brought to light during the Middle Kingdom, 2133 to 1786 BC, more precisely during the 11th dynasty. On the western bank of Thebes, the kings of this dynasty erected tombs and temples in memory of themselves after they passed away. We speak of King Nebذ, for instance, who built his tomb and temple to honor his memory in the bosom of a mountain from Thebes' western slopes. Its novel and inventive design complements it. The ancient Egyptian engineer fused the concept of a pyramid, an obelisk, in Arnold's view, with that of a terraced temple, housing two interment chambers, one for the statue and the other the tomb's owner. This tomb with a temple, which is situated south of the Hatshepsut temple in Deir el-Bahari, is now reduced to rubble. The tombs of his statesmen, including aristocrats, clergy, and workers, encircle it. Additionally, Winlock found a sizable rock-cut tomb nearby that included the remains of 60 warriors. Most likely, they died as martyrs in one of the conflicts between the rival rulers. Most likely, they died as martyrs in a conflict between the warring kings over who would rule the country. It is well known that this dynasty valued hard work and perseverance. This is demonstrated by the dynasty's nobility's eagerness to carry their weapons, bows and arrows among them with them into the afterlife. Numerous of them were discovered within the interment chambers of their graves, which encircled the tomb housing King Nebذ's temple. During the Antapian king's rule, the names of the deity Amun and his spouse, the goddess Amount, first emerged at Thebes. They ascended from the hallowed Ogdoad of Hermopolis, but Amun did not ascend to his heavenly throne until the 12th dynasty had taken the kingdom. Establishing his country under his flag, adding his star to the sky of the ancient Egyptian gods, and becoming the most beloved god of Thebes, its founder, King Amenemhat, meaning Amun in the front, adopted the god Amun as the deity of his dynasty. He took the position of his predecessor, the war deity Mentu, of the 11th dynasty, who was revered in Armad city, south of Luxor. For political considerations, Amenemhat chose to relocate his kingdom's capital from Thebes in the south to a city known to us as Ethpali, which means holding the two lands. Since this capital is situated in the middle of the two lands, we do not yet know its exact location, but it is most likely close to the Lisht area at Fayoum, which is where he chose to build his pyramid. Nevertheless, King Amenemhat left evidence of his presence at the Karnak complex, indicating that he did not overlook Thebes. Even if time did not allow it to last, King Senusret, his son and heir, followed him and started building the temple of Amun at Karnak. But the stones from much of what he constructed were probably later used as building materials. We discuss a few of them that were utilized as filler in the temple of Amun's third pylon. One of the kings of the 18th dynasty, King Amenhotep III, 1417 to 1379 BC, authorized its construction in Karnak. This white chapel of King Senusret was discovered to be entirely composed of white limestone by the French engineer H. Chevrier in 1936. It is now situated in the area known as the Open Museum, directly after the first pylon in the Temple of Amun in Karnak, to the left of the interior. Inside the third pylon, which he was overseeing the building of at the time, as infill. Other than the white limestone shrine built by King Senusret as a testament to the magnificence of what the 12th dynasty's kings accomplished there, we currently find no remnants of this dynasty in the Karnak complex. It is regarded as one of the most exquisite shrines in all of ancient Egypt, despite its simplicity. However, the ruins of buildings and temples constructed there by this dynasty's kings are still visible, even though none of them have survived the test of time. Following the collapse of the 12th dynasty, the Middle Kingdom came to an end, and the second dark era of ancient Egyptian history began, 1786 to 1567 BC. Thebes' political, religious, building and construction activities came to an end when King Ahmose established the 18th dynasty, drove the Hyksos out of Egypt, and made Thebes his capital. Thebes became a city of temples during the 18th dynasty and throughout the New Kingdom. These included temples for the daily worship of the gods on the eastern mainland, like those at Karnak and Luxor, as well as temples erected in a long row on the edge of the desert close to the cultivated lands on the eastern mainland to remember, honor, and venerate kings after they passed away. The mountain spanning the valley divides the tombs of the New Kingdom rulers from the western bank of Thebes, which stretches up to 3 kilometers from the northeast to the southwest. The size of the gods' temples started to rise in the New Kingdom before the empire peaked under King Thutmose III. The temples gained prominence and expanded in area. According to John Wilson, it's probable that the tremor in the Egyptians' confidence caused by the Hyksos' conquest of their country was the cause of the uncertainty that led Egypt to turn to the gods in the hopes of receiving direction and counsel from them. This is the explanation if it is the case. This makes sense because the gods and their priests' power grow. The practice of concealing the king's tombs in a desolate desert location away from bodies of water, vegetation, and populated areas also originated in the New Kingdom. This is the hilly region on Thebes' western bank known as the Valley of the Kings. After stealing the contents of several of the pyramids belonging to the kings of the ancient and Middle Kingdoms, they secretly excavated them out of the mountain's rock to protect them from tomb robbers. The New Kingdom's nobility, which included ministers, army generals, high priests, Theban rulers, and artists, excavated their rock tombs in various cemeteries in western Thebes. These cemeteries were given names based on the names of the contemporary villages that were constructed above and between the tombs. The cemeteries that were dug were named from the north Dra Abu el Naga, El Asasif, El Kaka, Shikabd el Kurna, Deir el Medina, and lastly, Kurnat Murat. During the reigns of King Amenhotep I and King Thutmose I, the engineer Inanni oversaw the construction of these buildings and structures. He was given the task of overseeing the building of the King Amenhotep I temple in the Dra Abu el Naga cemetery, which is located on the border of the desert. Although his tomb has not yet been discovered in the Valley of the Kings, some people think that he would have wanted to live forever in the Dra Abu el Naga region. But the tomb they claim to be his in this area is unmarked, and nothing inside proves that he is descended from King Amenhotep I. On the other hand, the finding of a temple honoring him and his mother, Queen Ahmose Nefertari, proves that he was the first to introduce a novel technique that divides the rock tomb where the mummy is kept from the memorial temple, which is where ceremonies and rituals are performed to help the deceased in his netherworld. The King Amenhotep I have some chapels that he created in the Temple of Amun at Karnak, but their stones were probably utilized for construction materials. This is demonstrated by the alabaster chapel housing the sacred boat of Amun, whose stones were discovered whole and used as filler inside the third pylon. Each chevalier rebuilt it just after the first pylon in the Karnak complex of Amun, in the region today known as the Open Museum, to the left of the interior. All that coincidence left for us was the shrine, the earliest in the 18th dynasty by some accounts. Built by Inanni to commemorate King Amenhotep I's first jubilee, Hep said, the inscriptions of which were finished under King Thutmose I's rule. Keys believed that this temple was intended to serve as a resting place for Amun's sacred boat. The alabaster stone used to build it was transported from the well-known alabaster quarry location, Hadnop, which is located close to Tel El Amarna. Following the demise of King Amenhotep I, King Thutmose III undertook the construction of the temple in the same hallowed location, overseen by his architect, Inanni. He constructed a wall encircling the remains of the Middle Kingdom Temple of Amun, the fifth and fourth pylons to the west of it, and an Osirian hall to the east of the fifth pylon. In front of the fourth pylon, he also erected two obelisks, the southern, right, of which is still intact today. Up until now, Thutmose I was the only one to cut his royal tomb in the Valley of the Kings. The wording on a stela in the tomb of the engineer Inani in the Shikabd el-Kurna district on the western side of Thebes, number 81, indicates that the king kept the details of carving this tomb extremely secret. I oversaw the excavation of His Majesty's rock tomb alone, no one saw or heard, the text states. Despite the total secrecy surrounding the preservation of this tomb, Inani was unaware that the Valley of the Kings had served as an Egyptian king's cemetery until the end of the Ramesside era in the 20th dynasty. After 1,500 years, it had developed into a significant location that drew Greek and Roman visitors, as well as modern tourists who come to enjoy the tombs here. King Thutmose II was followed by Queen Hatshepsut, who, with the help of her engineer Senenmut, added to and modified the Temple of Amun at Karnak. Between the fifth and fourth pylons, she built two obelisks, the northern, left, of which is still intact. Then she constructed a few shrines that are today situated on either side of the Holy of Holies, the chamber of Amun's sacred boat. The Temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak stretched southward during her rule. She gave the order to build the eighth pylon, a pylon that is currently located in the southern axis. The third pylon contained filler stones from a shrine that Queen Hatshepsut had constructed for the sacred boat. This shrine, which is now known as the Red Chapel because it was constructed of red sandstone, quartzite, was re-erected in the area known as the Open Museum, which is located on the left of the interior, right after the first pylon in the complex of Amun at Karnak. 500 years after King Mentuhotep Nebuchadnezzar's tomb with the temple was built, Queen Hatshepsut gave Senenmut, her architect, the command to build her famed temple with terraces in Deir el-Bahari. Together with temples devoted to the worship of the deities Re-Horakidi, the deity Hathor, the goddess of the west, and the god Anubis, the lord of the graveyard, this temple was dedicated to the greatest god, Amun. Furthermore, in the netherworld, this temple was utilized for unique rites that benefited Queen Hatshepsut as well as her parents, King Thutmose I and Queen Ahmose. Senenmut employed high-quality limestone to construct this temple instead of using sandstone from Mount Silsila quarries, south of Edfu, as is the custom in other temples. Since the pyramid or obelisk is a physical reminder that a royal tomb exists, it vanished from this temple. Queen Hatshepsut started building a temple, which King Thutmose III finished after her, in the sacred location of Medinet Habu, in the southern part of western Thebes. According to ancient Egyptian beliefs, she dedicated the temple to the resting place of the god Amun's ancestors. In addition to her first tomb, which she dug in the Wadi Sikat Tekets, Hatshepsut permitted herself to dig a royal tomb in the Valley of the Kings while she was the king of Egypt. During King Thutmose III's reign, Thebes saw tremendous prosperity, rising to prominence as the world's most significant metropolis and the hub for war booty. Thebes's Lord Amun profited from the foreign plunder. John Wilson claimed that the soldiers carried a statue of him into battle and that he received the lion's share of the spoils since he had promised them victory. Thebes' god Amun rose to prominence during the 18th dynasty and assumed the role of ruler of the gods. The Hidden One is what his name implies. He is the invisible god of the air, present everywhere. John Wilson believed that the king god, who commanded the soldiers, and the god who approved of those conflicts shared equal responsibility for building that empire. Because of his sympathy, Amun-Ra gave the go-ahead for an expedition against the Asians and gave the king his sword and divine flag to use as a guide when they engaged in combat. When the troops triumphed, they owed Amun a due for taking care of them and keeping them safe, and they had to give him his large portion of the riches. In return for his kindness, they also had to increase the offerings they made to him. Over time, Amun's wealth grew significantly because every battle victory the army gains adds to its resources, and we don't think they would have taken anything from it had they lost. Thus, the dominant relationship between the country and the god of the empire was one of divine participation in the operations of a sacred state rather than one of those who forewent gaining a benefit. While other priests contributed in accumulating wealth and power, such as the priests of Ra in Heliopolis, Tut in Memphis, and the god Set, the god of the Asians, none of them attained the level of achievement attained by the priests of Amun at Karnak. Much of the tribute that King Thutmose III brought into Egypt from his conquests was used to embellish the temple of Amun at Karnak. He enlarged the temple's area greatly and then built a tall wall around the two obelisks that his rival, Queen Hatshepsut, had raised to conceal their greatness. He added a great deal to the temple. He constructed the sixth pylon, which is situated right in front of the Holy of Holies. In addition, he added to the transverse hall that runs between the fifth and sixth pylons and constructed two halls for the annals. In addition, he had two obelisks placed in front of King Thutmose I's two obelisks and had the Akmenu structure, housing the festival hall, built. It was constructed behind the remnants of the Middle Kingdom temple, on the eastern side of the Karnak temple of Amun. The seventh pylon is an additional pylon that he added to the southern axis. In the 33rd year of his reign, he placed two more obelisks in front of it. The obelisks of Thutmose III were all relocated from their original locations and were given ambassadorial status in London, New York, and in Istanbul. Moreover, it dates back to King Thutmose III's era. Two columns include a three-dimensional inscription that represents the papyrus flower as the north and the lotus flower as the south. They stand in front of the Holy of Holies on either side. He also helped Queen Hatshepsut construct a shrine for the Theban triad, which consists of Amun, his wife Mut, and their son Khonshu. This shrine is located in the Luxor temple behind the first pylon that King Ramesses II had built. On the western mainland of Thebes, King Thutmose III erected a temple in his honor near the edge of an agricultural area and excavated his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Reference must be made here to the few colorful and decorated rock tombs of nobles that were unearthed on the western mainland of Thebes up until the time of King Amenhotep I, in order to complete the picture of the early 18th dynasty at Thebes. Some, particularly in the vicinity south of the Ramesseum temple, were destroyed and rebuilt with other tombs. This temple honors King Ramesses II, and as we shall see, during the reign of King Thutmose III, the quantity of aristocratic tombs rose. The Jubilee Temple, Hepset, located in the courtyard between the 9th and 10th pylons, is the only remnant of King Amenhotep II's artistic contributions to the embellishment of the Amun complex in Karnak. He left a shrine to honor his memory on the outskirts of western Thebes' agricultural region, and he was buried in his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. After King Thutmose III ordered the obelisk to be cut, however, he did not live long enough to erect it. Only King Thutmose IV was able to do it. This was corroborated by Thutmose IV, who also wrote it down in the writing engraved on it. He stated, "I erected a single obelisk in Thebes for the first time, and that it was probably erected after the festival hall at the end of the eastern axis. Today, it is in Rome, referred as the Lateran obelisk. It is 30.7 meters tall and weighs 455 tons, making it one of the tallest obelisks from ancient Egypt. In the Valley of the Kings, Thutmose IV cut a rock tomb, but his temple was totally demolished." Thebes peaked during King Amenhotep III's conciliatory reign. The enormous statues at the Luxor temple, which stand 16 meters tall, and the Karnak complex, which have 24 meters tall statues, both demonstrate how immense the work he created was. The two colossal statues of Memnon, which represent the surviving portion of his temple that was erected in his honor, also amply demonstrate this. The so-called Avenue of Rams, which stood in for the deity Amun's land route, was also constructed during King Amenhotep III's reign. Amun traveled this route to visit his wife, the goddess Mut, at both her temples south of Karnak and the Luxor temple. As a result, this route split into two. The eastern branch went to the temple of the goddess Mut, which is located south of Karnak, and the western branch went to the temple of Luxor, which Amenhotep III constructed for the Holy Theban Triad, consisting of Amun, the father, Mut, the mother, and Khonshu, the son. The king gave the order for it to be built, and he wrote the account of his holy birth on the walls of one of its chambers. Amun was required to transport his holy boat from the Holy of Holies at Karnak to his sacred sanctuary in the Luxor temple. This avenue of rams is the route that was designated for the celebrations that were held during the festivals. As a result, 6 little chapels were spaced out along the route leading to the holy boat's final resting place. Amenhotep III constructed 6 chapels specifically for this purpose, following in the footsteps of Hatshepsut and Thutmose. In addition, the king commanded that hundreds of statues of the goddess Sekhmet, she is one of the goddess Mut's images in this instance, be built in different temples. In addition, King Amenhotep III excavated a large lake that is today known as Lake Habu in front of his palace, which he constructed for himself on the western bank in the Makhata district, south of the Medinet Habu temple. Regarding his tomb, he gave the order to have it cut in the western Valley of the Kings. Nobody else took part in this valley except King I, who also dug his tomb there. Following the death of his father, King Amenhotep III, Amenhotep IV, later known as Akhenaten, took over as king of Thebes. As soon as matters were under control, he had the idea to summon the deity Aten, who is housed in the disk of the sun. East of the temple of Amun in Karnak, the king compelled the priests of Amun to consent to the construction of a temple dedicated to the god Aten. As a result, the Aten joined the state deity Amun in the Karnak sanctuary, where he was acknowledged by his priests and given the formal title among the gods of ancient Egypt. At first, Amenhotep IV did not harbor animosity against the gods of ancient Egypt or their priests. Instead, he devoted all of his energies to advocating for the worship of his god, Aten. He then started a relentless assault on Amun and his priests after learning that the priests of Amun were scheming to destroy him and his new faith. Then, tracing the name of Amun to every temple and sacred location, he eradicated it from Thebes as well as from all of Egypt. He even changed his name from Amenhotep to Akhenaten in the 6th year of his reign. Unable to stay in Thebes, he abandoned it in favor of a new capital he named Akhenaten, which means the horizon of Aten, which is the current Tel El Amarna on the eastern bank of the Nile near Malwi in Minya. Thebes was impacted by King Akhenaten's rule. Its temples were shuttered, it was neglected for a period of 12 years, and its revenue was given to the state of the Aten until his passing. Following him on the Egyptian throne was King Smenkhar. King Tutankhaten, who took the name Tutankhamun after returning to Thebes, came next. His Opet festival celebration was displayed on the walls of the Luxor temple's 14 columns hall. In addition, he built statues of the Theban gods, and his renowned tomb was discovered in the Valley of the Kings. King I, as previously indicated, followed him and cut his tomb in the western Valley of the Kings. With the deity Amun's blessing, King Horemheb, the final king of the 18th dynasty, was formally crowned. To appease the priests of Amun, he ordered the destruction of the temple of Aten, and the stones from that structure were used to fill the 3 pylons that were built in the Karnak complex during his reign, the 9th and 10th pylons to the south, and the 2nd pylon to the west. So, without realizing it, Horemheb saved for us the special antiques from Akhenaten's time. In the Valley of the Kings, he gave the order to have his royal tomb dug. Under the rule of the kings of the 19th and 20th dynasties, Thebes continued to flourish. Ramesses I, Ramesses II, and Seti I all had a hand in finishing the enormous hypostyle hall at the Karnak temple of Amun. In the western part of Thebes, they also constructed temples to honor them and cut their tombs. Not to be overlooked are the enormous tomb of Seti I, which contains numerous scenes and writings pertaining to the literature of the netherworld, as well as the well-known temple honoring Ramesses II under the Ramesseum's name, which is notable for housing the largest known statue of King Ramesses II himself. To the left of the interior, right after the first pylon, to the temple of Amun at Karnak, King Seti II added 3 resting places for the sacred boats of the Theban triad, consisting of Amun, his wife Mut, and their son Khonsub. Considered the last great ancient Egyptian king to protect Egypt, Pharaoh Ramesses III was the greatest of the 20th dynasty. He exerted every effort to safeguard Egypt against the onslaught of intruders. He managed the eastern and western parts of Thebes. He built 2 minor temples dedicated to the god Amun. The first was located immediately after the initial structure in the Karnak complex, on the right side of the interior, and the second was located south of the Amun-Ra temple in Karnak, south of the goddess Mut's temple in Ashur precinct. In the Medinat-Habu region, a huge temple was erected in his honor. Additionally, he gave the order to have his rock cut in the Valley of the Kings. Regarding the internal situation in Egypt, the specifics are known thanks to the findings of the excavations and the Great Harris Papyrus No. 1, which is currently on exhibit at the British Museum and dates back to King Ramesses III's reign. The papyrus scrolls elucidate Egypt's current economic state as well as the role played by the gods' temples inside it. It is known that the Temple of Amun possessed 10% of the entire agricultural land, with the remaining gods' shares not exceeding 5% of this total. 421,362 heads of cattle and other large and small livestock were housed at the Temple of Amun in Thebes alone. This god not only owned numerous prosperous factories but also gold and silver mines. This could account for the degree of the god Amun's priests' power under King Ramesses III. The country's authority declined and its dignity was lost when the late Ramessides of the 20th dynasty succumbed to the influence of the priests. The country's political climate started to shift. Egypt's power in Nubia vanished along with its rule over Asia. Egypt lost its empire and contracted within its natural boundaries. Furthermore, during the 21st dynasty, Egypt was governed by 2 royal houses. One was located in Tanis, San al-Hajar in the eastern delta, and was headed by King Smendes, who had absolute authority over the delta and Middle Egypt. The other in Thebes, which was practically the capital of Upper Egypt throughout this dynasty's reign and was ruled by King Herihor, the priest of Amun. Later, the Libyans established the 22nd dynasty and established Bubastes, Tel Basta in Zagazig, in the eastern delta, as their capital, subjugating Egypt. But because they were drawn to the god Amun, they oversaw the building of the massive open courtyard known as the Libyan courtyard of the Amun complex at Karnak, which sits between the first and second pylons. The 23rd and 24th dynasties were characterized by weakness in Egypt until the Nubian king Piankai overthrew the weak kings and established the 25th dynasty. Thebes and the Amun complex piqued the curiosity of this dynasty's rulers. One of this dynasty's kings, King Taharka, built a hall in the complex of Karnak's first courtyard. Only the massive column bearing its name remains out of the 10 enormous columns with open papyrus-shaped capitals. Egypt was ruled by the rulers of the 25th dynasty until 667 BC, when Ashurbanipal's army invaded Egypt. Memphis was occupied and Thebes collapsed, and its fall had such a great resonance that the whole ancient East was stunned. The capital was therefore relocated to Sais, Sal-Hajar in the western delta, during the 26th dynasty, and Mentumhat, the Theban ruler at the time, made every effort to restore the damaged aspects of Thebes. Then came the second blow during Cambyses' conquest of Egypt during the 27th dynasty. He struck the city directly, destroying everything of its grandeur and pride. Thebes was merely one of the provinces of Upper Egypt during the Ptolemaic era, regardless of the shrines they constructed in Luxor and Karnak as part of their customary practice to appease the gods and priests of Egypt. Its purity has been breached and its delight taken from it. During the Roman era, Thebes attracted tourists who came to enjoy their stay. Since that time, Thebes has used its monuments to tell the world about Egypt's past greatness, civilization, and populace. B. Names and titles of Thebes. The city of Thebes during the Old Kingdom is not well known to us. It was listed in a few places in ancient Egyptian writings as one among the cities that made up Upper Egypt's fourth province. It was called Wast and remained thus until the Middle Kingdom. It was written using only the scepter symbol. The earliest known instance of writing the city's entire name is from the early 12th dynasty. The word Wast refers to the scepter, an ancient Egyptian symbol of power and dominance. Later, the word Wast became to refer to the whole fourth province, and during the Ramesside period, a different writing form for the name Wast emerged. The goddess carrying the city's emblem above her head and clutching a bow and arrows in her hand was the incarnation of the word Wast that also surfaced in the New Kingdom. Wast the Victorious was the name given to this manifestation. The triumphant city is another name for the city. The city of Amun, the mistress of all cities, was how the ancient Egyptians referred to Thebes during the Ptolemaic era. Thebes was also referred to as the southern city, beginning with the Middle Kingdom, in order to set it apart from Memphis, which is situated to the north of the valley. The only reason it was known as Nut, or the city, back then was because it was well known for being the country's capital. The late period saw the appearance of the city's personification. Similar to how the name Wazet had previously existed in the New Kingdom, the name Nut was likewise deified. Given that the names of the goddess of the sky and the city Nut are similar, this deification may have occurred for that reason. This embodiment of the name Nut was shaped like a female hippopotamus with two hieroglyphic signs on her head, one representing the province and the other the city, appeared on one of the walls of the Temple of Ibid in Karnak, which is located south of the Temple of Amun-Re and west of the Temple of Kotsu. The New Kingdom texts refer to it as the city of Amun. By this name, it was also mentioned in the Old Testament, and it was called city in the Coptic language. Thebes has also been referred to as Iunu since the Middle Kingdom, which means the southern city of Iunu, to differentiate it from the northern city of Iunu, which is the city of En-Shams in the northern Cairo neighborhood of Monterey. The famous name Thebes comes from the Greeks, who named it so because it resembled one of their cities with the same name. According to Sethe, its origins can be traced back to the ancient Egyptian term Jamet, which denotes Medinet Habu. Gardner acknowledges that the word Ibit almost never has the feminine definite article ta, but he nevertheless links the word Thebes to the word ta-Ibit, which refers to the holy sanctuary. It's possible that this name was in use during the time of Homer, the 9th or 8th century BC, when it had the feminine definite article. In his work known as the Iliad, he was the first to mention the name of the city of Thebes. Thebes gained the name 100-gated one when he described it as Thebes with the rich houses with 100 gates. This was because of the city's numerous tall pylons and imposing gates. To distinguish the city from other places that were known as Zeus Polis, meaning the city of Zeus, the Greeks named it the great city of the god Zeus, because they linked the Egyptian god Amun with the chief of their gods, Zeus, whose name they gave to Amun. But only the eastern bank of Thebes was given this name. The western bank's residential sections were referred to as Memnonia. In addition to referring to Thebes as Zeus Polis Magna, which means the great city of Zeus, the Romans also called most of the regional capitals including Thebes as metropolis. Following the Romans, the Arabs conquered Egypt and gave Thebes the name Luxor, which translates to the city of palaces, after being astounded by the size of its structures.